Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Patrina Laurie, and today we will discuss some of the challenges that leaders face in virtual working environments. I'll also offer some practical tips and strategies that leaders can apply in their organizations. As you'll see here, there are some keywords that will be explored in this discussion today. And as we prepare to go into this discussion, I look forward to questions and feedback as we dive deep into this topic. This is our agenda for today. There is a growing body of literature on this topic. Please take a moment to review our agenda. As we prepare to start this discussion, please know that employers who can manage the challenges and focus solely on employees' health and well-being of their workers, these are leaders who are likely to influence not only job satisfaction, but also performance, productivity, and ultimately the success of that organization. I'll give you a moment to review the agenda. One of the main challenges that leaders struggle with is being able to ensure that team members have psychological safety. What that essentially means that employees need a safe, sacred space in order for them to communicate and to function optimally within the workplace. And we know that communication is the basis for life, especially the life of a relationship, right? So I always say that words have meaning. So it is always best for not only leaders but also employees to ask the question of what do you mean by that? Because effective communication begins when the sender and the receiver understand what they're communicating. And we find that is it's attributed to Ortex in Panteli and Caius in 2008. These are the three takeaways I want to highlight for this particular slide. And the first thing is that leaders must take ownership and responsibility, not only for the health and safety and well-being of their employees, but also the fact that what that organization does and what they do not do, that leader is still ultimately responsible for everything that goes on in that company. Number two, across the literature that I reviewed, I came across and I've seen in the readings that leadership support, it plays this integral role in collaborating, building relationships, and also promoting work-life balance. And we know from studies that individual will support what they create. So if leaders are not being supportive and inviting their team members in those planning sessions at the onstart, especially in a virtual environment, it can become challenging for leaders to actually maintain that balance and to lead their teams well. And then number three is the fact that leaders must ensure that everyone voice matters, right? So regardless of whether it's a team member at the lower level or someone in the higher echelon of that organization, it does not matter. Each person needs to have their idea be explored and brought to the table so that there can be a consensus and everyone can actually explore those ideas. And it also allows for, it also contributes to everyone having a clear understanding of how their workers are doing also. And it all comes down to how the organization is performing as a whole, because I always say again that teams, there's no I in team. So being able to fuse information and being able to work together, that can be one of the biggest challenges where leaders don't allow that safe and sacred space for others to actually be at that table and to discuss these insights. And as you see here on this slide, I did highlight the fact that there's also this lack of open forum, right? Where employees will tend to struggle and not, be vulnerable in front of their peers, their team leaders, because that space is not cultivated for them to do that within the organization, especially if they're working from home, right? So that is something that we must consider and address as one of the main challenges. As we continue our discussion here, so as you see, the number two challenge that leaders will struggle with within a virtual workspace is the fact that continuing to be efficient and productive can be a challenge. And you see here where I highlight the fact that because teams are so geographically dispersed, it can be very tedious and very cumbersome trying to, get teams to work together, to collaborate, and to still produce the output that they were producing while they were working in a traditional work environment. And there's three things that I'll also highlight for this slide. And I'll start again with saying communication, communication, communication. That is one of the keys for being, that leaders will struggle with in order to be efficient and productive, because some workers may not communicate early and often, which can cause arguments, back and forth, redundancy, right? And just really ineffectiveness that can truly affect that organization's bottom line. And, you know, also the fact that leaders leaders and team leaders may not necessarily be intentional about their time, so there are no scheduled blocks of time on their calendar to do what matters most to them, right? So for instance, establishing a no work zone after 7 p.m., that can also add to productivity, because now this gives people more time at home to spend with family. You're able to reset so that you're rejuvenated and you're ready, filled with energy to start your the following day, and to have all these ideas, because we know that the more sleep you get, the more rest and your nutrition, and you have more time for your fitness, the more you're able to function in a manner that is conducive for your growth and for your benefit. And number two is this idea of mental model. So employees don't want to use online team project and task management tool. Like I saw this in the study, and I was really shocked by it, because these systems tend to kind of bring people together, and you're able to work on projects with team members, and that is lacking in this space right now. And it also, and these management tool, it helps to establish the team and for them to share task progress too, right? And any other important updates. But too often, why employees don't use these systems that that their leaders may establish for them, the reason for that, some individuals just want to do their own thing, right? They're at home, the space is a little different. It may not be outfitted for work, but they are at home, right? It just create a new sense of energy for them. That feeling of, okay, let me take a little 5 minute break here, let me grab a snack kind of thing, you know. But it all comes down to accountability, and leaders must be able to hold their team members accountable, even if they don't want to be accountable, and so that they do not take advantage of the working environment. And then lastly is the idea of work schedule, right? It can become challenging to establish flexible work schedule to support employees due to no set priorities. Everyone is trying to do, way too many things at once, and there's just no clear vision. And as a result, employees don't have personal control over the hours that they're working each day. And there's this acronym that, I use in my workspace, and I call it MEDS. So everyone should take their meds. The M stands for meditation, so that's reflecting, journaling. The E stands for exercise, staying active each day. The D stands for diet. We have to have proper nutrition. And the S stands for sleep. We know through studies that sleep plays a crucial and vital role in being more optimized and productive, so that we're able to focus and not feeling this sense of overwhelm in our work schedule, so that we can not only support that organization, but also to learn, grow, and to serve in these environment, in this remote space that most people are working in currently. Okay, so moving along here, the number three challenge that leaders face in a virtual environment is managing change and continuity. And what you see here is that, management in this particular space, if they do not know what to change and want to continue, it can ultimately affect the overall organization from top to bottom, from bottom to top. It's this directional movement with not knowing, okay, we're in a virtual space, so communication methods will change, and being able to adapt to that particular transition of communication. So, three big takeaways for this idea here, and I'll start with number one. So, if there are no tracking mechanism in place, it will be very difficult to know what to change and what to continue, because if we're not tracking the processes, systems, and behaviors, regarding a particular organization, if a leader does not having a track record of what's working, what's not working, what they need to refine or adjust, there's no way to address these issues. So that is key. And then number two is information sharing. So this works differently in remote settings, but the principles remain the same as if you're in a traditional environment. And it all comes to the fact that everyone must be on the same page. This is key. All parties must know what is happening, and everyone have an equal understanding of the overall team's goal and how each team member plays a role in achieving that goal. This is important because a lack of shared mental model, it could reduce motivation. And not only that, it can really affect the foundation of the overall team, right? Like what that team is built on, right? That mutual trust and understanding. Because individual members, if they don't understand how their work at the lower echelon, how it all helps with the big picture of that company, too often, that will create some disconnect. And alternatively, it could cause inefficient redundancy. So, for example, more than one person might complete that same task if there's a lack of communication about everyone's specific assignment. So being able to, just being on the same page and communicating early and often is key to really continuing to, you know, build on what was already established with that particular team. And then number three, it is the leader's responsibility to develop a healthy, and multifaceted approach to solving issues and conflict. As leaders, we cannot run away from conflict. We have to dive into it deeply and don't allow it to develop into this uncontrollable ticking time bomb, right? Because that could explode at any minute. So we have to address, issues that may come up, and we may have to change how a leader may have to change how they address certain conflict or issues in the workplace. For example, issues with evaluations, right? That is something that may have to be discussed face to face and not necessarily over the phone or through a virtual space, because we know face to face have that weight, and there's so much value added in that face to face interface. And then also, when it comes to the different programs that an organization may have, it's important to evaluate those as well. That may be a challenge for some leaders to determine whether or not they'll continue certain benefits that was available in a traditional space versus a virtual space. So being able to continue to guide, coach, and lead workers within a remote environment, it all starts with changing how information is communicated and disseminated from the top to the bottom and from the bottom to the top in a fluid and manageable manner, so that everyone is on the same page and is working towards a common goal. And lastly, leaders may struggle to develop healthy organizational culture. Again, this is the heartbeat of any organization, and this is something that leaders will struggle with, whether it be traditional or remote space. And I'll start again with highlighting three things here that I think will be value added. So, number one, it is no surprise that working remotely can make team members feel disconnected from their organization. Therefore, leaders must be committed to check in with their teammates. When someone asks, "How are you doing today?" "I'm okay." "How are you doing really?" And with that really at the end, because it'll really go beyond the surface of what that person may be feeling or experiencing that day. So these check-ins should address the team members' well-being, any issues they're having, and how you can help them with their career development. So leaders, calling their team members in a remote space, it's not the time to really dig into work related things. You want to develop those relationships and really get to know your employees. And individuals can feel as if their position is stagnant, right, when they're working remotely. So it's the leader's responsibility to ensure that they continue to feel as if they can grow in their career and also feel as if they're part of the team, right? So and this will base on employees' level of need. So new team members who are going through the onboarding process or they've already completed it, they should be contacted more frequently, right? Whereas those who are autonomous might prefer less contact, right? They've been in a company for quite some time. They're on this trajectory of, excelling and doing great things. So that check-in may be a little minimal. However, leaders should still reach out to let those individuals know that that leader is still available to serve and to be that support system for them. And then number two, it can be a struggle to bring people closer together, right? Due to the different experiences and personality type personality types that may exist within any organization. So some individuals will be more comfortable communicating virtually, while others may become fearful, especially if they've had a bad experience, right, with interacting with others online. And I'll highlight here. So in the study, Cross and Vankov 2022, that failure to maintain regular contact and not being able to develop these meaningful connections with team members, it can ultimately, lead to this discontent and disconnection. So being able to bring people closer together and to provide that inclusive, equitable, and supportive workplace that Chewy et al. 2016 spoke about in their article is absolutely vital. And then number three, too often remote workers, they'll tend to work longer hours, and this is due to their autonomy and self-space scheduling, right? So this is not a long-term plan. It cannot be, because it can lead to burnout, stress, dissatisfaction, or disengagement, as Middleton 2007 found. They also found that additionally, remote workers may fail to mentally detach and switch off from work, right? So there's just no time to reset, refocus, rejuvenate, and to go, to continue life and to maintain that work-life balance. And similarly, some employees may not maintain their physical and mental health due to the ever increasing number of career demands, since more employees are spending a significant amount of time working they're just sitting at their desk, there's no movement, so they're in this sedentary state, right, according to Handon 2018. And that is something that is not good, because movement is everything. Movement and water, at least having that, will get an employer through the day. So that culture that leader cultivate is key in order to continue to promote that active movement for employees. And then also back in 2018, Handon also found that people in London, they worked over 33 hours per week, while the average working hours for the entire country in the United Kingdom was about 31 hours. So with that said, at the end of the day, leaders have this responsibility to really cultivate a space wherein their workers are able to have this unified, front, and also cohesion, and being able to maintain their physical readiness, and being able to still achieve their work outcomes within the remote working environment. All right, so what does all these challenges mean for leaders? I'll start by saying that leaders must always strive to adapt and customize their niche while supporting their employees. Leaders must also let go of some things, right? So while leading others, it can become a distractor that will make the whole it can make the whole environment fearful when you have a controlling leader, right? And it can become stressful and miserable over time. So leaders must take that opportunity to step back, analyze the situation, and at times just allow their teams to succeed no matter how nervous they may be, and to just have that hands-off approach and being able to be that good coach and mentor that will be there to support them whenever there's a setback or failure. And then number three, so setting regular one-on-one meetings with team leaders so that, they don't become disconnected from the overall team. And this is key because, it helps with being able to check in on how, their work is going and how they're doing in general. So one-on-one meetings do create that space for that to occur. And it's let that be a time. So there should be a time when leaders take, that they'll come to the manager to just discuss, team members come to discuss their concerns, they asking questions, right? Or they may have problems, or even have small wins that that they've had, that they would like to share with their leader. And that leader must be able to just be willing to listen, be fully present, and seek first to understand, and then to then to be understood. And then number four, so this one goes hand in hand with, being disconnected from the team. So because you won't know that you're disconnected if you're not self-aware. So another big uh, highlight here for these challenges, that leaders must be self-aware of what is happening, not just in the company, but in their lives as well, how they're managing in their heart, space, mind, right? So every leader should have a personal growth plan so that they're constantly moving forward and not getting stuck, right, in the same mediocre routine. And lastly, they can send out these personal brand survey to their peers, right? That 360 degree look on, and even to their employees, to find out, help for them to identify those leadership blind spots that they haven't already noticed on their own. That really do help with most of these challenges as well. And then also creating that mission statement, right? So this is where, leaders set that clear priorities for their team or company, and it helps to guide the team to achieving that desired end state. So communication again is how, well, they're communicating how they're planning to grow the team, as well as, the growth opportunities for each team member. So it'll all, come tumbling down if there's not a set clear path for not only team leaders but team members as they work towards that common goal. And then also, give team members something to believe in and to work towards. So that's what the mission statement does. It kind of binds everything together. And then also, mistakes, right? So it is part of being a human, and, they're a huge part of leadership. So being, failing and picking yourself back up. So, but there's good news, because you can always use those mistakes as a leader to help, to become a better leader, and for you to get out. So it's better to start, putting your best foot forward, messed up, and learn, right? It's this cycle that leaders will go through. And it's also good for leaders to have fun, right, with their teams, especially when they fail. So always leave room for some lighthearted team building during the work week. Find ways, leaders should find ways to celebrate and enjoy each other's company every once in a while. And this could be simple as having a group lunch or a happy hour. And those can be done virtually as well, especially in that type of environment. And then I'll also say, disagreements, right? So again, we have to encourage healthy conflict. And whenever there's disagreement, we just have to leaders must create that supportive environment where, gossip, name calling, that passive aggression, right? It'll shut people down. So, people should feel free to voice their honest opinions. And it goes back to that psychological space that I talked about earlier. If people feel, safe in that space, they will voice, their honest opinions, so that that leader can actually address these conflict or issues that they may be having. And if necessary, right, scheduling a meeting specifically for, that leader and their team to just work through that conflict and that, so that it's not bottling up over time, right? Because eventually it'll just lead to even more problems for in the future. So pushing through the discomfort together will only create more trust, and it'll make the team stronger. Okay, so moving right along here. So in this slide and the next, I will discuss some practical tips and strategies for leading virtual teams. And most of these tips were taken from and implemented from the Reyes et al. 2017 study. This was one of the main studies used in this presentation. And the purpose of Reyes et al. 2017 study is to examine 5 main challenges related to virtual spaces, as discussed earlier, and provide practical tips for team leaders to help their teams transition from face-to-face to virtual teams. And this is in order to maintain accountability and connection with one another. Reyes et al. 2017 study contributes to the literature on virtual teams and virtuality as organizations meet the challenging demands as they transition from in-person to virtual organizational structure. So the challenges that has been discussed so far and the tips I'm about to share all tied and was related to this particular study on how leaders can not only manage their isolated and distant teams, but also how to bring them closer, right? And, to explore different approaches to ensuring that collaboration and productivity and efficiency, all these things are still working together for the good of that organization. And I will go into more detail as we continue here. So, based on the first challenge that we spoke about, uh, I do want us to focus on the first one, so psychological safety. So, the key tips here is that leaders must provide access, right, to health and well-being resources. And this is supported by Biggio and Cortez 2013 study. And employers should provide accessible and flexible working programs and services to help employees manage their mental health and also their well-being, right? So, for instance, Jeanette et al., found that 2021, she and her colleagues found that employers who provide 24-hour virtual services to employees, they're more likely to intervene early to support their employees. Why is that? Accessibility and flexibility to key resources that can help employees, right, during those challenging and difficult times that they may be experiencing, being so isolated from their organization. And then also implementation of community-based intervention. That is another key thing, key tip in order to promote that community-based support for employees. Also, people want to be validated at the end of the day, right? So leaders and other team members, they must be fully present and and I said this earlier, they must first seek to understand and then to be understood, providing this collaborative and sacred and safe space for employees to voice their ideas and opinions so that they're not feeling like, they don't have that support system, right? It all ties into their psychological health. And again, communication, there must be clear communication lines across the board from top to bottom and bottom to top. And then transition. Oh, one more thing. So for with the Reyes et al. Study for that one, again, the no judgment zone, right? That is important. Too often you have employees, they'll judge each other, they'll judge their leadership because, they're seeing, higher folks in the higher positions or level doing it. So people at the lower level, they'll do the same, and the stigma can erupt over time. So in order to eliminate that, leaders need to cultivate, again, that no judgment zone. And then moving along, so also continuing to be effective and productive. So in for this challenge, some of the main tips for that particular challenge is that leaders must focus on first things first, right? At the beginning of the workday, and everything else happens after. And that includes these daily check-ins, daily meetings, right? To get to the point of what the day looks like, what the month looks like, what the year looks like, and just working towards those goals. Working first things first. And then also promoting that work-life balance across teams, right? Determining what works for the team. So Pennington and ACOA AOCO 2021 and Wyatt et al. 2015, they found that this work-life balance must exist in order for employees to perform at these optimal levels, and just learning how to implement a proper work-life integration system that works best for the team. And then lastly, teams who develop that mutual trust and understanding are more likely to work together and are able to synchronize their efforts in order for the team to succeed. So again, you see it here on this slide, Cross and Van Koff 2022, they found that, leaders who take full advantage of team building activities, they're just more likely to be more effective and productive in their working environment. Okay, so continuing here. So number three, managing change and continuity. So that was another challenge we discussed earlier. Some of the tips and strategies in order to you know, lead well within remote environment. We'll start with communication. So the communication modes, whether it be text, email, phone, video, social media, right? These modes will drive how information is shared in real time. And this is internally and externally to the organization. So being able to tap into these modes and resources is key in order to figuring out, again, what should we continue to do? Should we hold some meetings in video conference and then potentially transition into like a video call later, right? Or can this be discussed in an email format, right? Or Microsoft Teams, that Microsoft Chat. So that's another great collaborative way to connect with teams. And then, oh yeah, which brings me to my next point. So team must use these collaborative tools such as Zoom, we got Google Suite and Microsoft Teams to help create that shared understanding. And these tools, they help, to fuse team efforts so that you can achieve organizational outcomes, and, you're able to, again, host masterminds together as a team. You can attend various training programs, and, just collaborate on that team level. Also lead, coach, and mentoring, right? This is a continuous state of being and doing. So that is something that is highly recommended that leaders continue to do in a remote space. And it is important to promote that professional and personal development within that organization. And I think, one of the big things too to change within the virtual space, again, is this ability of how we're sharing information. So if previously, employees working within an office space, they'll be able to go to that other team member's desk to communicate. However, in a remote space, again, they have to connect through these collaborative tools. So that is a major change and adjustment that leaders must exercise and adapt to. And then moving on to how we're going to develop this healthy organization culture, right? Again, it is the heart, the organization culture, it is the heartbeat of any organization, and it all goes back to people. No people, no organization. So leaders must cultivate an environment where workers can learn, grow, and contribute to that organization mission. And in order to do that, the resources and the tools must be set, and there must be this inclusive environment that everyone ideas and everyone feel warm, welcome, and appreciated, especially during that onboarding process, which plays a vital role as well. And then the organization mission statement, it gives people this sense of hope, and it gives them something for them to believe in and to work toward. And I think I said that earlier as well. So again, this shared understanding and just again being able to work together. And then leaders must also recognize and celebrate their team's small win, right? We can't just be running like robots all the time. Take a moment, pause, celebrate that those individuals who are doing exceptionally well on certain tasks or projects that they're working on. It really helps to build our community. And then lastly, is to create, engage, and encourage fun, right? So non-work related virtual events such as a virtual happy hour, this can occur in order to uplift those who may feel isolated. They may feel, like they're so far away, but yet with those small events, it'll really help to bring people together and to bring that unified front. Okay, so some gaps that were found in the literature reading includes, there is a lack of study on what management is actually doing, right, at the higher levels in order to influence policies and practices in their organization. That is key because, they are at such high level, and the impact they can have at from top to bottom is far and in between. So more study certainly need to be conducted to see what they're actually doing at the higher levels, which includes, right, so interviews with senior leaders. That was a bit lacking from the literature, and these interviews with senior level leaders, again, I believe it'll give us a better understanding of the decision dynamics and possible internal conflicts about health objectives, you know, and strategies to achieve them, right? So, again, how well is the organization performing regarding, not just the leaders, but the team members, you know, are customers happy right now? Just being able to get a better side picture and more in-depth study from senior level leaders is key. And then also, there were no tracking mechanism for the most part that was found in or on how employers are measuring certain aspect of their employees' well-being and mental health. So additionally, the effectiveness of such measures have not been analyzed. So this is another potential area that can be explored in future studies. And again, you know, leadership styles, right? So leadership style, qualities, and attributes are critical. These factors can have an impact on how well team members perform and function virtually. And this, again, was something that was lacking in the literature. So future studies should certainly see how various leadership styles like transformational leadership, servant leadership, authentic leadership, how all these different leadership style and an individual leader attribute, how that is impacting the overall team dynamics and also the overall health of the organization, what's that impact looks like. And also conserving resources, right, is vital. So having cost-effective training programs can also help an organization to maximize their efforts. And we know, with resources that it helps for people, it helps most companies to maintain that competitive and global edge, right, in the economy. So being able to analyze and assess how well leaders are, how much funding is going towards these training programs, towards individual psychological safety, the organizational culture itself, and even productivity, right? What training or system and processes that are in place to support that. So those are some other areas that do need to be explored further. And then overall, right, the virtual working environment, it's constantly changing, and with advancing technology comes new challenges. So with that said, future studies must focus on this long-term effect of employees' implicit and explicit knowledge, well-being to share information, right? Like how likely are team members to actually discuss, the things that may be impacting them. And I think having those longitudinal studies are key in order to explore those effects. And then lastly, investigating the interaction in virtual teams based on relationships, task completion, or cohesiveness. Those interactions can also give us further insight into how well team members are actually completing tasks, working together to achieve, a specific outcome in order to affect that bottom line of the organization. So these were some of the main gaps that I, found in the study, and I hope that, future scholars will certainly uh, take a look at these and develop a plan moving forward. And for us to, as potential scholars, also keeping these in mind. Okay, so we've gotten to the most favorite part of this discussion for me. So, the biblical integration and application of this topic today, it all goes down to God's divine providence, right? And that is that God, He is guiding, He's providing for and sustaining creation through His wisdom, power, and benevolence. And when I think about this topic and the study, I tie it back to that scripture reading in Exodus with the Israelites. God was able to provide bread from heaven, right? Manna for the Israelites. Even though they complained and bicker about their condition, God had freed them from slavery, but they still had a slavery mindset while they wander in the wilderness for 40 years. Why is that? Those who refuse to change the way they think, they had to they died during that period wandering in the wilderness, right? And those who were anchored in the God Almighty were able to enter that promised land, right? You see, God's omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent being, it's eternal. And everything God does is consistent with his character and nature. So nothing escapes the Lord's purview. And the the one takeaway here from Exodus 16 verse 1 through 36, God is the provider and sustainer. So despite the challenges that God is still able. And the same applies for leaders today working in these remote environments. There will be challenges, there will be obstacles, but being able to be steadfast, grounded, and anchored in God's word is vital. So, what leaders can do to adapt what they can do to adapt here is that there will be challenges and failure. However, employees must, choose to learn from their experiences and continue moving forward. Same goes for the leaders too. So don't quit, keep going because there's better ahead, right? And with our prayers, we need to constantly be in this mindset of knowing that God is either going to say yes, no, not yet, or something better, right? There's always something better. So we have to keep that in mind. So leaders should not be bitter or angry with others. Same thing applies for the team members. Allow God and your faith to help you to make the right decisions in the thick of adversaries, because they'll come and go, but how we approach it in real time is so key. And God's goodness will always show up in every situation. He does, whether it be physical, financial, emotional, mental, or spiritual. He will show up despite what we're going through. And the Lord, He created humanity for a purpose. So leaders today and those working in remote spaces, you know we're all here on earth to ultimately become Christ-like in how we think, act, and decide. And the service and significance that we add to the workplace, that is the formula for success. However, it does not exist in a vacuum, because our purpose, it's dynamic. That's all it is, right? And our dreams, it ultimately lead to service, in what we do, who we're becoming, and how we want to show up and to serve in the marketplace and the global economy. So again, having this attitude of, you know, always wanting to learn, grow, and serve is key. So, leaders, it's key for you to host these masterminds, create this, you know, ensure that you're promoting community outreach activities such as volunteering opportunities, provide your personal reading list, and then the last big takeaway here is these practical solutions that I would like to share. So, number one, we have to set the atmosphere for profitability, satisfaction, and for growth to occur. Number two, right, do not rely on your understanding, but in all your ways, acknowledge the Lord and he shall direct your path. And then number three, build and grow your community by showing up with that vigor and strength and compassion to make a difference in your sphere of influence. And then lastly, number four, use your time wisely by focusing on things first in the morning. Again, starting the day with prayer, creating this atmosphere, at your job, and just show up always ready to serve, always ready to be of service to others. All right, so as we come to a close here, I'll give a brief summary and conclude everything we've discussed. So, organizational settings will continue to change and evolve. This is a constant process. However, leaders must adapt and pivot to ensure they're looking 10 to 15 years ahead to maintain that competitive edge and relevance in growing and scaling their business. And in order to do that, the challenges that we've talked about, so starting back with number one, psychological safety, right? So just being able to provide employees with the necessary tools and resources that they need in order to maintain optimal health and wellness, and also for them to feel safe and secure in how they're sharing information and how they're interacting and communicating with their teams. Being able to build that community of people wherein employees are able to perform to their full potential, right? With the support and care from management, subordinates, and peers. That is very important. And then number two, we talked about efficiency and productivity, challenge number two. And in order to overcome that challenge, right, we do have to, leaders must maintain that shared and collective mental model. So having those collaborative tools, Zoom and Google Suite, in order to fuse information is key, and just maximizing the use of digital platforms, right? And those take time because people have to be trained, and they have to get familiar and comfortable with developing those soft skills in order to operate some of these software that's available to many teams now. So it takes time to implement those, but leaders should just keep improving those over time. And again, building those quality relationships and establishing mutual trust and understanding within their teams. And then the number three challenge was managing change and continuity. So maintaining that shared and collective mental model and information sharing is very important. Again, we must refrain from the default attitudes, right? Some of these are formed over time and some are automatic. So, for instance, right, formed over time, we know we would go to our neighbor or a peer within an office space to communicate, right? And with that behavior and attitude, we're not able to do that now in a remote space. So that automatic attitude that we have to develop is that, okay, we have to get on one of these collaborative platforms in order to communicate, and we have to constantly follow through on each action, each task or project that an individual may be working on. And then moving along here, so also leader, coach, and development. That is also key. We have to continue those processes and development path for employees so they don't feel like they're stagnant and they're stuck, not moving up in their careers, right? So that is important, and feeling that disconnect. And then number four, so healthy organizational culture. This is again the heartbeat of any organization, and communication is key in order to facilitate that. So promoting that inclusive, equitable, and positive work culture is so important, and supporting those structures. Leaders must show that genuine care and concern for others, and also celebrate their team members' small wins, because at the end of the day, you know teams are stronger together. When they're apart, they can tend to become disconnected and, in their own little bubble. So leaders must always constantly strive to mold those teams back together. And also, daily reflection and awareness of one's attitude, behaviors, thoughts, actions, motives, values, and beliefs is another key thing that we must constantly assess and address over time. And I'll leave these final thoughts here when it comes to hunting the good stuff, right? So at the end of the day, leaders must always strive to, again, to facilitate uh, what went well today, what can we improve on, what are we doing that is not working that we need to change, and what are we doing that we're doing well and we need to continue. So constantly reassessing and evaluating those is key. Tell someone thank you, right? That is another thing for creating that positive culture as well. And some books that I wanted to recommend as we wrap up here regarding leaders operating in the remote workplace. So, Boundaries for Leaders by Dr. Henry Cloud. That's another great book regarding, leaders developing those boundaries within this space. Another good one is Crucial Conversations by Joseph Grenny and Carrie Patterson, Ron McMillan, and Al Switzler. That's a good book. And then lastly, Deep Work by Cal Newport. That one is really good with scheduling those blocks of time and staying focused on what matters and working on things that you should be working on at the beginning of the workday. And then one final bonus, that Ideal Team Player by Pat Lencioni. He's awesome. Another great author there that talks, of how to really build that team from the inside out and just being able to be of service within the organizational space. Okay, so these were some of the references that I used for this presentation today. If anyone would like access to these, please send me an email, which I'll be sharing on the final page here. These are some great resources regarding this topic that is very helpful, so I'll give you a moment to review those. These are some additional resources. I'll give you a moment to review those. There's like two more slides of references, so bear with me as we go through these. And more resources that supported my discussion today. Please take a moment to review those. And lastly, these are the final resources for this discussion today. Take a moment to review that as well. Hi again, everyone. My name is Patrina Laurie. We've come to the end of this presentation. I appreciate you for being here. As I've said throughout this presentation, these challenges that leaders are facing in the remote environment is nothing new. It's been happening for centuries now. However, leaders should embrace this particular space that we're in now and continue to learn, grow, and develop so that they can serve in this capacity. Again, thank you for being here, and please do shoot me an email if you would like access to the resources that I used today, or you'd like a copy of these slides. I look forward to talking to you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.